Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. Welcome back for another episode of Legal Tea. Today's topic is a current trend, something going on in the current time that is pertinent to my little estate and elder law world. Today's topic is on Wendy Williams, and specifically what in the world is going on with her name in the headlines. Maybe you've caught it, maybe you haven't, but I'm kind of a sucker for pop culture things. And I guess that makes sense since we talk about celebrity estate planning on here. But in case you're not a pop culture weirdo like me, I happened to catch that there was something going on with Wendy Williams like last year sometime in 2021. And I can't remember exactly what I saw, but it was something questioning Wendy's health. Then, when I started researching for this episode, I found that there have been some health issues going back a few years prior to 2001, like 2008-ish, actually. So let's first start with Wendy Williams and talk about who she is as a person. Then we'll talk about kind of what is going on with her. According to her Wikipedia, Wendy is an, quote, American broadcaster, media personality, businesswoman, writer, and actress, end quote. So yeah, she does a whole lot. And not to mention, she's hosted her show, The Wendy Williams Show, since 2008. And a little side note, I had no idea her show had been on that long. Man. Health-wise, according to her Wikipedia, Wendy has been quite an open book about her past addiction to cocaine. And beyond that, in 2018, Wendy shared that she had been diagnosed with Graves' disease. After this comes a series of situations like in late 2018, she fractured her shoulder. In early 2019, she disclosed she had been living in a, quote, sober house for some time. And that's really all she said. And she also disclosed that she has vertigo. Then later in 2019, she shared that she had been diagnosed with lymphedema, which is a disease that causes ankles and legs to swell. And the list is still not done. In 2021, she tested positive for COVID-19. So yeah, she has been put through the ringer. According to an article on prevention.com, in October of 2021, the Wendy Williams Show crew shared Wendy was experiencing some serious complications from her Graves' disease diagnosis, and that she needs more time to get healthy before returning to the show. Then, in November of 2021, Wendy shared herself, quote, I'm a woman of a certain age and I know enough to listen to my doctors and will return to my purple chair as soon as we all agree I'm ready, end quote. Side note, for reference, I had to look this up because she referenced I'm a woman of a certain age. She is currently 57 years old. In December of 2021, another update was released, and it shared that Wendy would not be returning to the Wendy Williams Show in January of 2022. So what does all this mean? Well, according to that prevention.com article, the Wendy Williams Show had been airing without Wendy since October 2021. Instead, the show had sort of been continuing with guest hosts. The Wendy Williams Show has not addressed the future of the show until very recently, which I'll get to in a second. But according to a TMZ article, a guest host, Sherri Shepherd, was going to be possibly named as the permanent guest host. But right before I recorded this episode, I always try to look online to see if there's any sort of last minute updates that I should include. And just a few days ago, and I'm sitting here recording this on February 24th, 2022, just a few days ago, the Wendy Williams Show and Wendy Williams released that she would not be coming back to the show like indefinitely, and that Sherri Shepherd was going to be not the permanent guest host. She was actually going to be starting her own show, her own talk show, and it be in the same time slot as Wendy Williams' show was in. So, for the last few months, there have been so many rumors swirling about what is truly going on with Wendy. For example, according to the prevention.com article, there have been, quote, unsubstantiated claims that she's had to use a wheelchair and is suffering from early onset dementia, end quote. However, her personal team has continued to deny those claims and stated that these stories are inaccurate. A source that is supposedly close to Wendy said, quote, reports of a stroke, drugs or addiction issues, or a dementia diagnosis are all false. Whether Wendy can return in the fall will depend on how her healing goes over the summer. Her health is the most important thing, end quote. So, of course, that quote came before it was just so recently released that she was canceling the Wendy Williams show and Sherri Shepherd taking over. So, this is about when I started noticing headlines about Wendy. I started seeing and hearing that she was supposedly dealing with some cognitive impairment. And now that I look into things, her personal team seems to argue that is not true. So that just goes to show you to take everything you see and hear in pop culture with a grain of salt. But who knows if it's true? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. They're obviously, the Wendy Williams show team is trying to keep things hush-hush. And if it's not, things are just grossly being blown out of proportion. Along these lines, there was a recent thing in the news, I say news in air quotes, by the way, about Wendy on February 10th, 2022. According to an article on page6.com, Wendy's attorney, Celeste McCall, filed a petition in New York claiming that Wells Fargo, who holds a significant chunk of Wendy's wealth, has for more than 2 weeks denied Wendy access to her own accounts. This came about when Wendy's financial advisor claimed that Wendy was of unsound mind. Following this petition, Wells Fargo submitted correspondence to the New York judge to request that a hearing be set to determine Wendy's cognitive abilities and whether a professional like a guardian needed to get involved to possibly manage Wendy's financial affairs. So you may be thinking, why did Wells Fargo just randomly start feeling this way? At least that's where my head went. Like there had to be some sort of trigger or event that caused this. It's not like Wells Fargo would have just willy-nilly claimed someone was of an unsound mind. Well, okay, according to page6.com, the attorney for Wells Fargo, named David Pickus, shared that Wells Fargo, quote, has strong reason to believe Wendy is a victim of undue influence and financial exploitation, end quote. In line with his argument, David argues that Wendy's financial advisor, quote, recently witnessed signs of exploitation, including Wendy's own expressed apprehensions about the people around her, end quote. He further shared that, quote, other independent third parties who know Wendy well share these concerns, end quote. Following David's argument, Wendy's attorney Celeste shared that Wendy denies these allegations. In fact, Celeste goes on to share, quote, despite Wells Fargo's assertion that its suspicions are genuine, their decision to deny Wendy access to her financial assets for weeks without providing her or her counsel with adequate explanation of evidence to support its decision, and their decision to wait until Wendy filed an emergency petition for a preliminary injunction before pursuing or notifying Wendy that it had pursued, a guardianship proceeding gives pause for concern about Wells Fargo's intentions, end quote. As of today, when I'm writing this episode, which I'm writing this February 14th, 2022, recording this February 24th, 22, as of right now, the judge has not granted or denied this petition. So that's where things stand right now. And I'm guessing, since the issue is so pressing and things are moving, that possibly by the date of this recording going live, there may be some updates that I just didn't get to include in here. Because of how quickly things are moving, but also because the judge has not ruled on anything as of right now, Wendy's attorney Celeste alleges that Wendy has, quote, defaulted on several billing and financial obligations, including, but not limited to, mortgage payments and employee payroll as a result of being unable to retrieve money from her bank, end quote. Something this situation has brought to my attention is that many financial institutions have policies like this. So I'm sure Wendy's team is saying, shame on you, Wells Fargo. But honestly, a lot of financial institutions have policies like this to protect their clients from financial exploitation, protect their clients from themselves in cognitive impairment situations, etc. I have a friend who happens to work as a financial advisor, and his company, which is not Wells Fargo, but another big name company, have these safeguards as well. And at the end of the day, it's a sort of, a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Like, what if Wendy was getting exploited? Should they just stand there and let it happen? Watch it happen? At the same time, it is Wendy's money, and there should be plenty gobs of independence on what she wants to do, what she does, etc. And where is the balance, right? I know that my friend, the financial advisor friend at another big name company, told me once that their institution's policy is that there be an emergency contact on file. And if he suspects any funky business going on, he notifies that emergency contact. And of course, the client agrees to putting this emergency contact on their file, so it's not like, the advisor throws a name on there in the 11th hour when it's inappropriate. I'd be curious to know if Wells Fargo has a similar policy and if it was utilized. Or did they jump to court involvement? Maybe because of, who Wendy is. Or maybe it's because the emergency contact is part of the exploitation issue. Or maybe they tried to notify the emergency contact and they didn't help. Or, it just keeps going. Who knows? The public, nor the news, neither know, at least. As I said a bit ago, I'm going to take a wild guess that between writing and recording this episode and the episode going live, I bet there will be updates on this case. Good, bad, who knows? I think we'll definitely get an update very soon on what the judge decides. So whether the judge thinks Wells Fargo should unfreeze her accounts or not. And if I had to guess, but who am I? Jenny Roselle, a random attorney in Indiana, who knows nothing at all about New York law, I should mention. But if I had to guess, I'd guess that the judge will side with Wendy. I don't know why I think that, but I think judges sometimes sympathize with the person, perhaps with the person over a large corporation like Wells Fargo. After all, judges are elected, so they like to keep their people happy. Maybe it's the cynic in me, but perhaps this is all very intentional too. Maybe Wells Fargo brought this to the court's attention, so whatever happens, Wells Fargo can be sort of free of blame. Maybe Wells Fargo just wants a court order saying, Wells Fargo pushed this issue, and we're siding with Wendy on this. And then if something does happen with Wendy, whether it truly was financial exploitation or cognitive impairment, Wells Fargo can say, well, we tried. We live in a very CYA world nowadays. In case you don't know what CYA is, it's cover your you-know-what. I had a client once, I think I said CYA, and they just looked at me very funny, and I was like, oh, well, maybe that's not a widely known term of art. But anyways, we live in a very CYA world nowadays. So perhaps that is exactly what Wells Fargo's motivation is in all of this, to cover their you-know-what. So if you take interest in this topic with Wendy Williams, be sure that once this episode does go live, maybe do a quick Google search to see if there is any updates about what's going on. Alrighty, let's wrap this current trends, current events episode up. Next week's topic is on estate planning of the rich and famous. And on that episode, we're going to be talking about Tony Hsieh, who is most well known for being the retired CEO of the online shoe company Zappos. I should probably look that up, how to pronounce it, before next episode. Anyway, so that episode will be somewhat strange all around. Trust me, I have it written. It was, I got knee deep in that research and just kept scratching my head. So anyway, we'll talk about Tony next Tuesday, Legal Tea listeners. Talk to you then, and stay well.